Good morning. It's Market Day Report. We're so glad you're with us to start another week of trade. Okay, we've got quite a bit to process today, especially following a market holiday on Friday. So let's jump into the markets. Overnight trade for the corn market. Higher with new crop up 3 ticks at 466 3/4. This is a market that's up nearly 6% year to date. Soybeans up about 3% year to date, with the November and the overnight session 2 pennies higher, 10.34 1/2. I want to throw in meal and oil as well. Soy meal contracts were higher and bean oil contracts were lower in the overnight session. But it's interesting to note that soybean oil has been up 15% over the past 30 days, and year to date, up over 19%. Wheat market, what happened in the overnight trade? July, up 2 3/4 cents, 5.65 a bushel. Hard red, July contract, 4 higher, 5.74. And spring wheat, December contract, 2 1/4 higher, 6.52 3/4. Cotton market in the overnight session in the red, down 17, 68.27. Let's go to Springfield, Missouri. President, Midwest Market Solutions, Brian Hoops. All right, Brian, we're back to trade a full week. What are you watching?
Good morning, Tony. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope everyone had a wonderful Easter and a great weekend as well. So we're back to a full trading week, and coming up on Friday of this week is May grain option expiration, and then next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, is first notice day for May grain futures. So keep that in mind if you have some of those positions. Over the weekend, not a lot of news. We saw a sharply lower U.S. dollar overnight. It broke through some key support and just plunged overnight, and that has set off a buying spree across almost all commodities, such as gold and silver hitting new contract highs overnight, new all-time highs for gold for that matter, and then corn and beans, wheat, as you mentioned, all trading higher off of that news with the dollar being down. Now, there isn't a lot of other news. There's maybe some talk about planting delays, maybe some talk about replant in some areas in that eastern corn belt where they've received a lot of rains and have had flooding. But for the most part, these rains are a blessing for the winter wheat crop, especially in Kansas, where they really needed a drink. They're forecast to receive several inches of rain this week, and that should be a benefit to that crop. But yeah, certainly watching weather as farmers are gearing up this last week and again this week, putting a lot of progress of corn and soybeans in the ground. And of course, this afternoon we'll have updates on winter wheat conditions as well as planting progress for the corn, soybeans, and the spring wheat crop. Harvest, as far as Argentina goes for soybeans, we are way behind the normal pace. They've had too much rain that has slowed the soybean harvest down. That'll slow their loadings out and slow their soybean meal exports. So we may continue to see decent exports for our soybean meal as a result. But harvest of soybeans and the first crop of corn in Brazil, just about normal pace. And as far as soybeans go, it's almost completely wrapped up for the year.
All right, Brian, we did get a report from USDA. Actually, we had a couple of reports out on Thursday, but one involving cattle. So hang on, we'll come back and we'll talk about that cattle on feed report with Brian Hoops. Market Day Report continues in a moment. USDA out with a cattle on feed report after the close on Thursday. We'll talk more about that in a moment. What about cash trade on Thursday and into Friday? $210 in the South. As they finally got that, the Packers started the week trying to get 204 and couldn't get it done. 212 to 214 in the North, and then the rest at 333 to 335, mostly 335. All right, this is how we finished the session on Thursday. Live cattle futures at 209.82. And at the end of the session on Thursday, we were higher across the board for live cattle, for feeder cattle, and for hogs. And since there was no trade on Friday, that's why we're getting the unchanged there. But you can see August finished the session at 290.87. And then the hog trade, we want to zip down to the June contract at 98.02 and then July at 98.10. Again, the live feeder cattle and hogs all higher on the session on Thursday. And actually, live cattle have been higher 5 consecutive sessions, feeders higher 7 out of the last 8, and hogs 7 straight sessions higher. Let's bring back in Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions, and that cattle on feed. Will we trade that today?
Yeah, we should hear initially, Tony. You know, the report itself wasn't overall bearish. I didn't think it was pretty close to what trade had expected going into the report. Placement numbers were a little bit larger. Nebraska feedlots placed a lot of cattle last week, and that's where the big jump really occurred. Now, that could affect the October, December contracts. We might see a little weakness early there. Stock market is down this morning, so that's going to be a little bit bearish as well. But overall, you know, we had a very strong week for cash markets last week, surging higher. Really, the futures led the cash markets higher. We were called steady about a week ago. And then when the futures took off and rallied, that's when the cash calls started to firm up and the feedlots became real resilient, looking for that higher money. So April, June, I think are pretty solid this morning, with most of the weakness coming in some of those back months off of that placement number. The cutout values really didn't keep up with the cash trade last week, so that has hurt the packer margins. They're estimated to be about $120 in the red right now because of those that surge in the cash markets and the cutouts just not stabilizing or staying strong. They're a little bit weaker Thursday and Friday, and probably will be a little softer again today. So that's trade is looking for that to improve, and if we can't, then we may start to see the cash markets actually start to pull back here in the next week or so.
Brian, always good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to pop in. By the way, you were describing the cattle on feed report. I was looking at your shirt trying to determine who's going to win today, the bull or the bear. So we'll see you back here on Wednesday. It's Brian Hoops with Midwest Market Solutions. Okay, a little question for you.